Well, I welcome you to the 700 Club. Thanks for being with us. The nuclear option. Are Senate Democrats ready to run with it? That includes getting rid of what's called the filibuster, so that merely by a majority they can pass whatever legislation they want. Now, how would this radical action open the floodgates for the Democrats to pass their liberal agendas? And what, if anything, can Republicans do to stop it? Here's our Capitol Hill correspondent, Abigail Robertson.
Republicans are predicting dire consequences if Democrats remove the filibuster and permanently change Senate rules, allowing legislation to pass with a simple majority.
When they talk about transforming the country, they'll be able to.
Republican Senator Rand Paul tells CBN News he didn't support former President Trump's calls to remove the filibuster when the GOP held the Senate majority, and he certainly doesn't support it now.
I'm very concerned because basically the future of our country depends on two Democrats right now not overturning the filibuster.
Those two Democrats, Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin.
I am not willing to take away the involvement of the minority.
Senator Manchin confirmed he's not ready to end bipartisanship.
Can you imagine not having to sit down, or there's no reason for you to sit down with your colleagues on both sides and have their input? The Senate is the most unique body of government in the world, of governing body in the world. It's deliberate.
The number 2 Senate Democrat, Dick Durbin, argues Republicans abuse the filibuster, and it's time to end its power.
When Senator McConnell and others come to the floor and plead for us to hang on to the traditions of the Senate, I would tell you that their interpretation of the traditions is strangling this body.
But during Donald Trump's presidency, he argued this.
What about that nuclear option doing away with the filibuster?
Well, I can tell you that would be the end of the Senate as it was originally devised and created going back to our founding fathers.
President Biden suggested this week the Senate should go back to the talking filibuster.
I don't think you have to eliminate the filibuster. You have to do it what it used to be when I first got to the Senate, and that is that a filibuster, you had to stand up and command the floor. Once you stopped talking, you lost that, and someone could move in and say, I move the question of. So you got to work for the filibuster.
Minority Leader Mitch McConnell warns killing the filibuster would break the Senate.
Even though the American people sent a 50-50 Senate and a narrowly divided House, I don't think they were sending a message that there was a mandate to completely transform the country in every way liberals want to do that.
Vowing if it goes away, Republicans will use every rule and option at their disposal to stall legislation.
They're prepared to steamroll the Senate into a majoritarian body, just like the House, because it inconveniently gets in the way of all they want to do, to run up the debt, to raise taxes, and you've seen the disaster at the border.
Under current rules, Senate Democrats don't have the votes to pass the House-approved Equality Act or the For the People voting reform bill. If the filibuster goes away, those bills and more, such as D.C. statehood, could become law. Reporting from Virginia, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
Now remember, so many of the appointments of a president have to be with the advice and consent of the Senate. So the Senate's got to approve them, and that means there has to be a vote. Now, if that filibuster is done away with, you know, when Harry Reid did the nuclear option, he did it just for judges. And using that, when the Republicans got control, they just put judge after judge after judge in with a simple majority vote. But here are just some of the laws we can expect to pass if the filibuster is changed. The Election Reform Bill, the Equality Act, statehood for D.C. with 2 more senators, statehood for Puerto Rico with 2 more senators, a Green New Deal, gun control, and more. And there's something else, by the way, folks, that it was called the Fairness Doctrine. Now, the Fairness Doctrine, when it was in place, said that if you put on a conservative, you had to have a liberal in balance. Now, the FCC changed that, but if other FCC commissioners are moved through the Senate and they abolish the Fairness Doctrine, it'll cut all these conservative talk shows off the radio. That would have killed Rush Limbaugh and others like him. Now, that's what's in the offing. Now, it's a very serious matter, folks. And this Equality Act means, look, you will be able to register everybody to vote. You will have ballot harvesting. You can send out limitless ballots without respect for the fact they're not asking for them. They're just going to be flooding the mail. And the opportunity for fraud will be overwhelming. And the Democrats feel that with the immigrants coming in, that they'll mostly vote Democrat. So what are they going to do with them? They will try as they can to register as many illegal aliens. For example, in Virginia, where they've got so many liberals running the show, they've just started a thing that's going to give prisoners the vote. I mean, people who are released from prison, regardless of what their sentence or anything about them, if they're on parole or have been released, they will be able to vote. They couldn't vote before. Well, that's what's in the offing, folks. And it will be a one-party state, a takeover, and it will be impossible for the Republicans ever to gain power again. It'll be decades down the road. It depends on two senators right now, Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin. Two senators will make the difference. And if they switch, the floodgates are open. Well, in other news, Bibi, yes or no? That's what really the Israeli election boils down to. Dozens of political parties are competing for control. The big question, can any of the contenders form a coalition? John Jessup has that.
That is right, Pat. This fourth election in less than 2 years' time comes as Israelis are weary of COVID lockdowns and a battered economy. CBN Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell explains how, as Election Day draws closer, the picture is anything but clear.
In the latest surveys, the top contenders are Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud party and Yair Lapid's Yesh Atid.
You have to put someone in charge to revive the Israeli economy. Who are you going to do it? Somebody who's already done it successfully and brought Israel's economy to the best results in our history, or someone like Yair Lapid?
I think it's time for a generational shift in Israel. I think, as I was saying, I'm ready. The party's ready. We have the right plans. We have the right abilities. We have the right experience by now.
For this voting population that's weary of lockdowns, a battered economy, and too many elections, result projections are unclear. According to this poll from Israeli public broadcaster Kan, Likud remains in the lead with 30 seats. Yesh Atid is next with 21, followed by Yamina with 12 and New Hope 11. 7 more parties would likely enter the Knesset with fewer seats, including Defense Minister Benny Gantz's Blue and White Party. Others won't make the threshold.
No one can really forecast what will be the outcome.
In Israel's parliamentary system, citizens vote for a party, not the prime minister. There are 120 seats in the Knesset, and the leader whose party wins the most seats or who is most likely to succeed gets the job of building a coalition. Former Netanyahu advisor Aviv Bushinsky says there are really only 2 camps.
We can define these elections that it's a yes Bibi or no Bibi. Yes for Netanyahu or no for Netanyahu.
And while some 70% of the Knesset is right-wing, many on the right oppose him.
Great number of people who despise Netanyahu, don't like Netanyahu for other reasons, because Netanyahu is here for many, many years. Some say too many years, and without even mentioning the fact that he is being tried for corruption.
At Jerusalem's open-air market, the division was clear.
I'm a Likud man. I've known Bibi since he was the United Nations ambassador when I was living in New York, and I remain Likud.
The religious are really ruined by this subject. Until now, I always chose Bibi, all the years, simply. This time, I definitely won't vote for him.
We have a great prime minister. I believe it's time to change.
According to Bushinsky, more than 40% of those who intend to vote are undecided. And if there's no clear direction, Israelis could find themselves heading to a 5th election again this year or next. Pat?
Chris, you know, the thing that's looming in front of all of us is the Iranians, their nuclear ambitions. I mean, Can Israel function without a parliamentary majority and a clear prime minister? I mean, what are they doing? I thought they were making plans to have a preemptive strike against some of those nuclear facilities.
Well, Pat, yes, they've been limping along politically for the last 2 years, but militarily, I think Israel is prepared to do anything it needs to do to protect themselves from an Iranian nuclear program. So I think that's regardless of who, even if they go to a fifth election, I think across the board in Israeli political landscape, everybody is against Iran, and everybody is prepared to do whatever they can or need to do to confront a nuclear Iran. So, Pat, I think that's politically, they may be limping along, they may be in gridlock, but militarily, I think they're preparing, they're planning. We were up on the northern border a couple of weeks ago. They're ready for any attack against Hezbollah. They have operational plans, I'm sure, for many years. They know what they need to do to stop Iran. If they need to take that step, I think they'll take it, regardless of the political landscape, as fractured as it is right now.
All right. I know it's tough to call an election, but how do you feel about it? Is Netanyahu going to pull it off?
It's a great question, Pat. You know, certainly he's leading in the polls right now. He's got 30 mandates, according to the latest poll. But the question is, will he be able to get a coalition together right now? There's a couple of factors against him. First of all, you have three parties on the right that are, and two of those three parties say they're not going to serve with a Netanyahu government. So regardless if he's the leading contender, if he gets the most seats, the question is, will he be able to form a coalition? Now, key to that is a man named Naftali Bennett. We did a profile on him last week, whether or not he's going to join a possible coalition. You know, earlier today, Pat, I spoke with an Israeli friend, and I said, well, have you decided who you're going to vote for? And he said, well, I don't know. And I says, well, Pat, I said to Idan, how are you going to vote, and when are you going to decide? He says, I think I'm going to decide when I get into the voting booth. And I think 40% of Israelis have that same sentiment, either the day before or the day of. So it's really hard to predict exactly which way this is going to go. And, you know, I think it's really like a chessboard exactly how the numbers are going to play out. And Pat, I think even John Waggy, our political analyst, would have a hard time predicting this one.
Well, thanks, Chris. We'll keep our eyes open. Appreciate it, brother. John, what's next?
Well, Pat, severe thunderstorms heading for the southeast today, bringing potential tornadoes, damaging winds, and large hail. The same storm system spawned nearly 24 twisters Wednesday, damaging several homes and buildings in Mississippi and Alabama, and forcing dozens of University of Alabama students to seek shelter in a parking garage. South of the university, Greater Faith and Victory Worship Center took its second hit in 10 years, partially damaging the church's roof. The facility was rebuilt after a tornado struck back in 2011.
I just think that he has something greater.
Absolutely.
It's nothing about, I mean, things like this are going to happen, and it's just how we respond to it. We just believe that God's going to do something greater.
The storm system heads to the Carolinas today, and forecasters expect it to bring torrential rainfall, wind gusts of up to 70 miles an hour, with threats of hail and, Pat, unfortunately to say, more tornadoes.
Well, you know, where we are is foggy. It's kind of warm. Then they say there's some part of this area where they might, not only will they have heavy rain, they might have some snow. So
that's tomorrow. But I think we're also potentially up for some of that tornado activity and wind, high wind.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's an incredible storm. We're not quite sure it is, but that's part of life. We have changing weather.